The dusty streets of Hollow Creek were silent that morning, the kind of silence that presses against the bones and whispers of judgment. In the center of town, on a rickety wooden platform, sat a girl who had long been the subject of whispers, laughter, and scorn. Her name was Clara, and she was, by the narrow-minded standards of Hollow Creek, a burden. Clara's frame was large, round in ways that made people stare, snicker, and murmur cruelly behind her back. But her eyes, soft, brown, endlessly patient, held a quiet dignity that no amount of mockery could erase. Today, however, even her patience was tested. For today, the town had decided she was worth $2. The townsfolk had gathered, their boots kicking dust as they jostled for position. Some held hands over their mouths to smother snickers, others pointed fingers with shameless glee. Clara sat on the platform, her hands folded in her lap, head held high even as her heart raced with fear. She had learned the hard way that pride was all she could cling to when the world offered nothing but ridicule. $2, the mayor announced, trying to sound official. Anyone want to claim the girl? His voice carried over the crowd like a whip. Murmurs rippled through the townspeople. Some muttered that the price was too high, others laughed it was far too low. No one stepped forward, not because they didn't want her, but because no one cared enough to act with kindness. The cruel comfort of indifference had always been Hollow Creek's way. Clara's stomach knotted. She had hoped someone, anyone, would see her as more than what they mocked her for. That hope was fragile, easily broken. But she did not cry. She could not afford to. She had long since learned that tears invited ridicule, that vulnerability in Hollow Creek was dangerous. Then, from the edge of the crowd, came the sound of heavy boots crunching over gravel. A man emerged, broad-shouldered and weathered by years of mountain winds and solitude. His clothes were simple, stitched and patched in many places, but he moved with an assurance that suggested he belonged to the wilderness, not the petty confines of a town, the townsfolk whispered among themselves. The mountain man? He's been living alone in the hills for 10 years. Don't bother with him, he's strange. He did not respond to their whispers. His eyes, sharp and perceptive, settled on Clara. She met his gaze, wary but curious. There was a kindness in his face, a quiet warmth that seemed alien in Hollow Creek. "I'll take her," he said, his voice calm but firm, carrying over the murmurs like a bell. The mayor blinked, momentarily flustered. "Pardon?" I said. "I'll take her. This is $100. A shocked silence fell over the town. $100. 50 times what they had decided she was worth. Gasps echoed and fingers pointed. "Who does he think he is?" Someone spat. "She's nothing." The mountain man, unfazed, stepped forward and placed a heavy leather pouch on the platform. Clara's heart skipped a beat as she watched him. No one had ever valued her. Not her mind, not her heart, not her very being. Not like this. He held out a hand to her and she hesitated. Fear and disbelief warred within her. Could this be real? Could someone truly see her as worthy? "Come on," he said simply. "Let's get you out of here." Clara's hand trembled as she reached for his. The townspeople turned away, unwilling to witness this act of defiance. Some scowled, others fumed with jealousy. But Clara did not care. For the first time in her life, someone had chosen her. Not out of obligation. Not for a joke, not for pity, but for who she was. As they walked away, the wind seemed to carry a different tune, one of possibility and hope. Clara realized with a mixture of relief and wonder that the world might not be as cruel as Hollow Creek made it seem. Somewhere beyond the hills, someone saw her. Someone believed in her worth. And for the first time, Clara dared to believe in herself. The road out of Hollow Creek was narrow and dusty, winding through low hills that smelled faintly of pine and earth. Clara walked beside the mountain man, her hand still in his, feeling a strange mixture of fear, relief, and disbelief. She kept expecting someone to call her back, to demand she return, but the town was silent. Even the wind seemed to acknowledge her escape, whispering gently through the tall grass as if cheering her forward. "Where are we going?" she asked quietly, afraid her voice might shatter the fragile magic of this moment. "To my home," he replied simply, without looking back. "Up in the mountains, where no one will tell you you're worth less than you are." Clara's eyes widened. Mountains, a place untouched by cruelty. A place where she might finally belong. She wanted to ask more, but words felt small in the face of everything she was leaving behind. The town, with its mocking laughter and judgment, seemed a distant memory already, though she knew it would haunt her dreams for years to come. The mountain man, whose name, she would learn later, was Elias, walked with a quiet confidence. His presence was grounding, like a steady flame in a dark room. He didn't speak much, and yet each gesture, each glance seemed to carry reassurance. When she faltered on the uneven path, he caught her gently by the elbow. When a bird startled nearby, he smiled as if to say, "It's okay, everything's okay now." By late afternoon, they reached a clearing at the edge of a dense forest. The sun dipped low, casting golden light across a log cabin that seemed to grow out of the earth itself. Smoke curled lazily from the chimney, carrying the scent of pine and wood smoke. Clara stared, her chest tightening with awe and something she couldn't yet name. This is your home?" she asked, scarcely daring to believe it. "Yes," Elias said, nodding, "and soon it can be yours too. But first you need to rest. You've carried too much for too long." Inside the cabin, the warmth wrapped around her like a hug. There were shelves of books, jars of preserves, a small stove with a kettle, and a hand-woven rug that softened the wooden floor. It wasn't grand, it wasn't meant to impress, but it was alive with care, the kind of home that whispered safety. Clara realized she had never known such a place, never felt such peace. Over the next few days, Elias guided her through routines that seemed ordinary at first, yet were life-changing in subtle ways. They collected water from the stream, chopped wood, and prepared meals together. At night, he taught her to read the stars and listen to the wind. He didn't dwell on the past or speak ill of Hollow Creek. Instead, he focused on the present, on showing her that her worth was inherent, unshakable. One evening, as the sun sank behind the mountains, Clara confessed what had haunted her for years. "I've always felt like I was too much, too big, too slow, too unwanted." Her voice quavered. "People, they never saw me. They never cared about me." Elias looked at her, his gaze steady and tender. "They didn't see you, Clara, because they weren't ready to see kindness in someone else. But you—" he paused, resting a hand lightly on hers. "You don't need their approval. You need to see yourself. That's the start of everything." Her heart thumped at his words. No one had ever said anything like that to her, and yet, as she looked into his eyes, she felt the truth in them. For the first time, she allowed herself a sliver of hope, that perhaps she could be more than what Hollow Creek had declared. Perhaps she could thrive. Days turned into weeks, and Clara learned more than she had imagined. She learned to tend a garden, to care for animals, and to move through the world without fear of judgment. Every small accomplishment stitched her confidence together, piece by piece. And through it all, Elias never demanded, never judged. He simply guided and believed. Then, one crisp morning, as they walked along a mountain ridge, Clara looked out over the valley below. Hollow Creek lay far away, a tiny smudge of dust and buildings. The wind carried the scent of freedom, and the sunlight glinted on her hair, turning it to gold. "I never thought I could feel happy," she said quietly. "Not like this. Not without being afraid all the time." Elias smiled, a gentle curve that seemed to lift her very spirit. "Happiness isn't given, Clara. It's discovered. And you, my dear, have discovered it by simply being yourself." For the first time in her life, Clara believed it. She felt it deep in her bones, that she mattered, that she was deserving of care and love, that she could rise above the cruelty that had once defined her world. And as she walked beside the mountain man, with the wind on her face and the mountains beneath her feet, she realized something profound. Sometimes, it takes a single act of unwavering kindness to change the course of a life forever. Weeks had passed since Clara first arrived at Elias's mountain cabin, yet the memory of Hollow Creek clung to her like morning mist. Though the mountains offered safety, peace, and freedom, there were nights when the laughter, whispers, and pointed fingers of her hometown haunted her dreams. She woke in a cold sweat, heart racing, convinced she had failed, convinced she was still worthless. Elias noticed the subtle changes, her frown that lingered too long, the way she avoided the mirror even when she was alone, the moments she flinched at the sound of distant voices. One evening, after a long day tending the small garden they had planted together, he finally spoke. "You're carrying more than you need," he said quietly, breaking the comfortable silence of the cabin. Why do you let their ghosts follow you here? Clara looked down, her fingers entwined nervously. I can't forget Elias. Even if I'm here, I'm still that girl. The one everyone laughed at. The one who was sold for $2. Her voice cracked, and for the first time, tears slipped down her cheeks. Elias knelt beside her, his hands strong yet gentle on her shoulders. Clara, that town didn't define you. Not ever. And that price? They were wrong. Horribly wrong. They didn't see your worth. But I did, and I still do. Clara trembled, the weight of years of rejection pressing on her chest. She wanted to believe him, wanted to accept that she could be loved and valued, yet it felt too strange, too foreign. I don't know if I can ever believe it, she whispered. That's okay, Elias said softly. Belief doesn't come all at once. It grows like the first shoots of spring. You just need to give yourself permission to let it. For days after that conversation, Clara tried. She walked longer distances with Elias, explored hidden valleys, and even began sketching the mountains and forests around their home. She found solace in creation, in witnessing the beauty of the world that had nothing to do with judgment or ridicule. One afternoon, while gathering herbs along a narrow ridge, they spotted smoke rising from the valley below. Clara froze. The shape of Hollow Creek in the distance was unmistakable, and memories surged like a torrent. Laughter, scorn, rejection. She turned to Elias, panic flashing in her eyes. We don't have to go back, he said gently, reading her fear. We don't have to. But running from it won't help either. Sometimes confronting what hurt us allows us to heal. Clara bit her lip, her mind racing. Could she face the people who had mocked her for years? Could she rise above the shame that had defined her life? The thought seemed impossible, yet the mountains whispered courage, and Elias's unwavering belief in her strength lent her heart a fragile spark of bravery. Over the next days, Clara made a choice. She would return to Hollow Creek, not to seek revenge, not to beg for acceptance, but to show herself what she had learned, that her worth was not tied to their laughter, and that kindness, even in the face of cruelty, could transform a life. When they arrived, the town was abuzz with gossip. Whispers turned into stunned silence as they spotted Clara walking beside the mountain man. The people who had once jeered now stared in disbelief. The girl they had scorned, the girl they had literally sold for $2, carried herself with a calm confidence they could not ignore. Clara. The mayor stammered, his voice shaking. She met his gaze, her own steady and clear. I'm not here to ask for your approval, she said softly, yet firmly. I'm here to remind you that kindness matters more than cruelty, that every person has worth, whether you see it or not. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Some looked away, ashamed. Some whispered in disbelief. But others, a few young children, a mother clutching her son, looked at Clara with wonder, as if witnessing a miracle unfold. Elias stood beside her, silent but proud. His presence was a shield, a reminder that she no longer had to face the world alone. For the first time, Clara felt truly powerful, not because she could fight, not because she could prove herself, but because she had discovered the strength to stand tall in the face of pain and still choose hope. That night, back in the mountains, Clara watched the stars and felt a warmth she had never known. Hollow Creek had tried to define her, to limit her, to sell her for less than she was worth. But now she understood the truth. Her value had always been infinite. And the world, despite its cruelty, had room for those willing to see the good, the brave, and the kind. The first light of dawn crept over the mountains, painting the cabin in soft gold. Clara awoke to the sound of birdsong, the crisp air carrying a sense of possibility. But beneath her newfound peace lingered a question she hadn't dared to answer. Could she truly forgive Hollow Creek? Not for them, but for herself. Elias was already awake, tending the small fire. He looked up as Clara approached, offering a quiet nod. Ready? He asked. She hesitated for only a moment before nodding. Today she would return, not as the timid girl who had been sold for $2, but as someone who had discovered her strength, her worth, and the true meaning of kindness. When they entered Hollow Creek, the town square was crowded, as if the word of her return had spread faster than the wind. Faces that had once sneered at her now turned pale, some nervously shifting from foot to foot. Clara took a deep breath. I am not here to be mocked, she began, her voice steady, carrying over the whispers. I am not here to prove anything to you. I am here to show you what kindness can do. A murmur ran through the crowd. The mayor cleared his throat, trying to regain authority, but Clara's eyes held the room in silence. From her bag, she pulled a bundle of herbs, dried flowers, and hand-woven goods, items she had created during her time with Elias. She placed them carefully on the platform where she had once been sold. These are gifts, she said, her voice softening. Not because I expect gratitude, but because kindness can transform even the smallest moment. I was given a chance to see my worth. I want you to see that the world is larger than cruelty. The townspeople exchanged glances. Some were moved, some scowled, some didn't understand. But in that moment, a small child stepped forward, eyes wide with admiration. Are you really the girl they sold? He asked. Clara knelt, smiling gently. Yes, but I am more than what they said I was. You can be too. Always choose kindness even when others do not. Then Elias stepped forward, placing a hand lightly on Clara's shoulder. This girl is a reminder, he said, his voice calm but commanding. A reminder that the value of a person is never in what others assign to them. It is in their heart, their courage, and their actions. Something shifted in the crowd. The laughter that had once defined Clara's life was gone, replaced by quiet reflection. Some lowered their heads in shame. Others, particularly the young ones, looked at her with awe. For the first time, Hollow Creek saw her not as an object of ridicule, but as a symbol of resilience and grace. The mayor stepped forward, hesitant. I never realized. Perhaps we were wrong, Clara shook her head. It's not about blame. It's about learning. And you can learn from this too. You can choose kindness every day, in every action. By the afternoon, a remarkable transformation began. People approached her cautiously, asking questions about her life in the mountains, about Elias, about what it meant to live with courage and compassion. Clara shared her story openly, never with anger, only with the gentle strength that had been nurtured by her time away. When the sun set, casting a golden glow over Hollow Creek, Clara walked back to the mountains with Elias. She glanced back once, seeing the town in a new light, not as a place of cruelty, but as a place where seeds of change had been planted. Elias looked at her with pride. You've done something incredible, he said. You've not only healed yourself, but you've reminded them that kindness can transform even the hardest hearts. Clara smiled, feeling a warmth she had never known. I just wanted to show them it was possible, she said. No, Elias replied gently. You've shown yourself it's possible, and that is the greatest gift of all. As they walked back up the mountain path, the sky ablaze with the colors of dusk, Clara felt a peace that no scorn, no judgment, no past cruelty could ever take away. She had been sold for $2, mocked and cast aside, but she had emerged with her heart whole, her spirit unbroken, and a new understanding of what it truly meant to be seen, valued, and loved. And in the quiet majesty of the mountains, Clara realized that kindness, not judgment, not cruelty, was the force that could change lives for Evie. The mountains welcomed Clara and Elias with open arms as they returned to their cabin, the soft evening light painting the world in hues of amber and rose. The air was filled with the gentle rustle of leaves, the distant call of a hawk, and the quiet hum of life thriving in peace. Clara inhaled deeply, feeling the calm settle deep into her chest, a calm she had never known in Hollow Creek. Days turned into weeks, and Clara's life took on a rhythm that was both simple and profoundly fulfilling. She tended the garden she and Elias had started, her hands shaping the soil and planting seeds with a care that mirrored her own growth. She cared for the animals on the small homestead, learning their habits, listening to their quiet needs, and responding with patience. But beyond the daily routines, Clara discovered something even more remarkable. The world outside Hollow Creek was vast, alive, and brimming with possibilities. Each sunrise was a promise, each nightfall a chance to reflect on her journey. And every day, she felt herself shedding the shadows of the girl who had once been sold for $2. One morning, a knock at the cabin door surprised her. Opening it, Clara found a small group of travelers, strangers from distant towns, drawn by stories of the mountain man who had rescued the girl. They had heard whispers of Clara's courage, of the life she had built, and had come seeking guidance, or perhaps just to witness hope in action. Elias smiled quietly, introducing Clara with pride. "This is the girl who refused to let the world define her," he said. "She's living proof that kindness, courage, and self-belief can change lives." Clara's cheeks flushed, but she welcomed them warmly, sharing her story without bitterness, without anger, only honesty and grace. She spoke of Hollow Creek, of being sold for $2, of the pain and ridicule she endured, but she also spoke of Elias, of the mountains, and of the transformative power of someone choosing to see her worth. The strangers listened in awe. Children clung to her words, while adults nodded, some with tears glistening in their eyes. In that moment, Clara realized something she hadn't fully understood before. Her pain, her struggle, and her resilience could inspire others, showing them that even in the harshest circumstances, hope could flourish. Months passed. Clara and Elias continued their life in the mountains, but the story of the girl once sold for $2 spread far and wide, reaching towns and valleys beyond their own. Letters arrived from people whose lives had been touched, from those who had been mocked, shunned, or undervalued, people who now dared to believe in themselves because of Clara's courage. And Clara, the girl who had once felt invisible, began to see herself reflected in the lives she touched. She understood at last that her worth had never depended on Hollow Creek or on anyone else. It had been in her all along, waiting for someone to help her recognize it, for someone like Elias to remind her that a heart full of kindness could conquer even the deepest sorrow. One evening, as they sat together watching the stars, Clara leaned against Elias, her heart swelling with gratitude and peace. "I never thought life could feel like this," she said softly. "Full of hope, full of love. And I owe it to you." Elias shook his head gently. "No, Clara, you did this yourself. I only helped you see what was already there. The courage, the kindness, the strength. They were always yours." Clara smiled, feeling a lightness she had never known, a freedom that was more precious than anything money could buy. She had been sold for $2, mocked and abandoned, but now she was priceless. She was whole, she was loved, and in the mountains, surrounded by kindness, she finally understood what it truly meant to be valued for who she was, not what others said she was worth. As the stars glittered overhead, Clara made a quiet promise to herself, to live each day with compassion, to see the worth in others as she had been seen, and to carry forward the lesson that had transformed her life. The world could be harsh, cruel even, but it could also be beautiful, generous, and kind, if one had the courage to believe in goodness, to choose love over judgment, and to see the value in every human heart. And so, in the quiet majesty of the mountains, the girl once sold for $2 became a beacon of hope, her story a testament to the power of kindness, the resilience of the human spirit, and the life-changing gift of seeing the worth in someone who had been told they were nothing. Clara's journey had begun with ridicule, but it ended with a truth that resonated far beyond the mountains. Every heart has value. Every person deserves love, and a single act of compassion can transform a life forever.